My name, I gave my name. The I'm one of the managers on the implementation science team here at RNAO, and I am going to be facilitating this session for you today. I'd also like to introduce you to Andrea Stubbs, and she is the project lead of the Best Practice Champions Network and Program. So if you have any technical problems, she's online to help anyone in regard to that aspect of the webinar. So just a little bit about this. Our monthly information sharing webinars are a means of supporting RNAO best practice champions and those who are involved or interested in guideline implementation. And all of our speakers that we have on a monthly basis are those who are actively involved in BPG implementation, evaluation, and sustainability. So today we have the pleasure of a presentation on publishing pearls, making your manuscript shine for publication. But before we get started, just want to keep some housekeeping items in mind. First off, we really want these webinars to be engaging and interactive. So as you see, there's an opportunity for you to enter your questions or comments in the chat box. Please, when you do so, to indicate all panelists attendees so that all of us can share and learn from your questions and also from your experiences and comments. I also want to point out that this presentation is also going to be recorded because there is an opportunity to review it later on for those individuals who are not able to attend live today. So it's going to be posted on the RNAO website. And please note that if you do participate in the chat box, there is the potential that your comments and questions will be read out loud by myself or the speaker. And so your participation is implied consent to be recorded and posted on the RNAO website. So now it is my pleasure to introduce you to your presenter for today. Maureen Loft is the nurse practitioner, clinical nurse specialist at Strathroy General Hospital, where she provides care to medical and surgical inpatients and outpatients. She is also the BPSO lead for the Middlesex Hospital Alliance, which is a partnership between Strathroy and 4 counties hospitals. And prior to her joining the team, at Strathroy, Maureen worked at St. Joseph's Healthcare London for 28 years, where she began her career at the bedside as an ICU nurse. She's a dedicated lifelong learner, and she's returned to the University of Toronto to become an acute care NP, as well as worked as a NP CNS in orthopedics and diabetes. She also completed her PhD in nursing at Western University in 2015 with support of RNAO as a PhD fellow with research looking at the patient experience of initiating insulin therapy and the impact of utilizing the RNAO best practice guidelines. Her life beyond nursing includes an amazing husband and 3 adult children, and she loves roller coasters. And I used to love roller coasters, but now they make me really dizzy. And the faster and more upside down, the better. She also enjoys wine and dining with friends, and preferably after riding the roller coasters, which is a smart idea. So for those of you who are not familiar with BPSO, I did mention that once before. It stands for Best Practice Spotlight Organization. And so these BPSOs are healthcare as well as academic organizations that are selected by RNAO to implement and evaluate the RNAO's best practice guidelines. It is quite a dynamic partnership. It's really fun, and it focuses on making a positive impact on patient care through evidence-based practice. And RNAO provides that formal support in terms of implementation, evaluation, as well as sustainability of guidelines over a 3-year period. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to your speaker, Maureen.
Thank you very much, Grace. Can everybody hear me all right? Sounds good. Welcome everyone. I'm not sure what the weather is like where you are, but we have a beautiful sunny day here in southwestern Ontario, Strathroy. So hopefully you've got some sun somewhere around you. I want to thank RNAO for inviting me to speak today. It's always a pleasure to be able to connect with people in and about Ontario and other places as well. And I'm hoping that today we can just have a nice interactive conversation. In all honesty, I'm one of these people who would actually prefer speaking in person than speaking via webinar. I'm finding this actually more anxiety provoking than if I had a room full of 500 people, but I'll try to make it work. I'd like it to be as interactive as possible. So if you have a question, please feel free to just put it in the chat box, and then I'll ask Grace or Andrea to sort of interact us as we go. I think it's probably best if we answer questions to some extent as I present, and then that way you can get your answer in the moment, the teachable moment, as it were. So we're going to talk a little bit about manuscript preparation today. So maybe not the most exciting subject, but hopefully we can make it give you the information that you need to forward with your manuscript. So to just start us off and get everybody thinking a little bit and hoping that you don't have your post-lunch glucose surge, we're going to do a polling question. So the question is, what do you look forward to doing once the pandemic is over? So your choices are traveling, attending concerts or sporting events, shopping, without lineups, or with more than 5 or 10 people, depending on what zone you're in. So go ahead and submit your vote. While you're doing that, and just to get us in the mood for manuscript preparation, I did a quick lit search this morning. Putting in COVID-19 came up with 3.5 million articles that have been written. Putting in COVID-19 nursing implications came up with 158,000 articles written. And if I change the timeline to that to 2021, so we're only in February of 2021, there are already 3,140 articles online about COVID-19 and the implications of nursing. So obviously a lot of literature being done already. So it looks like traveling is the winner, and then nice to see closely followed by getting back together with our family and friends. So let's all hope that our vaccine rollout moves forward and we can all get back to doing the things that we miss. Okay. So just having trouble. There we are. So here are our formal objectives for today. We're going to explore ways to capture the experiences of either being a champion or working with best practice guidelines. As you can see, I've been very fortunate to do a lot of work with RNAO and best practice guidelines. We'll go through, try not to be too nitty gritty about what you should be looking for in your manuscript and possible ways to get it accepted for publication. What publication might look like for you, and then I hope to leave at the end some time to brainstorm some ideas that you might have. So I'm only planning for about 30 minutes at the most for me doing the talking, and that should leave us lots of time to look at questions and brainstorm, okay? So I just like this slide. Actually, I haven't written it yet. I'm doing the promotional tour first to see if being an author is the right career move for me. So a lot of people, I think, especially a lot of nurses, we don't necessarily go into nursing think that we're going to be authors or publish articles. But when we think about the work that we do and the art and science of nursing, if we don't write it down, if we don't put it out there for people to see and know the work that we do, then how will we be able to move things forward? So if you've never thought about writing about anything and think, well, that's only for academics, you're completely and utterly wrong, okay? So it's not just about academics. I mean, there's a very important line for academics, obviously, but anybody who has information that is worthy to be shared can go ahead and share it. So I think that's the sort of one of the key messages from today is that you don't have to be an academic, you don't have to have a PhD, you don't have to master's to be able to write. You may use these people as resources, but anybody can put an article together and get it published. So just another little short disclaimer. I have a lot of text on these slides, so they're very prescriptive. I thought it's easier that way. Again, typically if I was doing a more oral presentation, I would just have bullet points, but this way you're going to be able to get copies of the slides after today's presentation, so don't worry about writing too many notes. I have most of what you need on the slides there, so just sort of sit back and we'll have a coffee table discussion about how to get your manuscript on that coffee table. So again, every manuscript will have most of these elements. Again, it depends on the journal or where you want to get it published, but you're going to need an abstract, something that provides a brief, and we're going to go through these in a little bit more detail. So an abstract to provide some information about what your article is about or what your paper is about. Obviously, you're going to introduce it. You're going to use your methods section to explain what you did. You're going to have some results, the information that you want to share with people, and then you're going to have a discussion about those results and perhaps come to a conclusion. Always important to acknowledge the people that you have worked with regards to the manuscript preparation, and then obviously references, because we shouldn't steal other people's work. That's called plagiarism. So let's pull back a little bit. Often people will say to me as well, I don't do research, so I can't write anything. Well, there's different ways of doing things. Yes, definitely formal research. Again, there's a very important role for this in science and in nursing, and we do studies, we do randomized controlled trials, we do in-depth qualitative studies, and so that research can be done. But there's lots of things that can be done in the role as what we call quality improvement or quality assurance initiatives. And for example, because I work at a small community hospital, I don't have the infrastructure available at a lot of the larger tertiary care or academic centers. So a lot of the work that I do is a quality improvement, looking at things, gaps in nursing that we identified with the best practice guidelines. And when we've identified that gap and we've tried to address it, we've made a difference. And so that difference is what somebody else might be interested in knowing about. So again, it can be research, it can be formal research for sure, but also, think outside the box and look at your quality improvement initiatives, as those as well are things that are important for other people to find out about. If you're not familiar with sort of qualitative, quantitative, or mixed jargon, so qualitative things are usually we refer those as stories. So the words or experiences that people have had. Quantitative definitely deals with numbers. So when you're looking, pre and post information or data. So what was happening before we did our intervention, what happened afterwards, what was the percentage increase, what was the percentage decrease. So the quantitative refers to the numeric aspect of it. Or is it a mixed kind of thing? So do you have both elements in the article that you want to discuss? I remember when I first went back to university, we talked about, there's articles that talk about stories and numbers, right? And I would say that today, especially when you have an article and you're able to combine both, because there's the numbers there provide maybe a base for the science, but it's often the stories that people can relate to most. Remember, I had a patient like that, or I had a situation like that, or we had a program like that. So things that people can connect with. So quite often using elements of both are really, really important. So that qualitative, quantitative, or a little bit of both. Whenever you are planning to write, start early. So if you have a deadline and you need to, get something done, start early thinking about what you want to do, because it's going to take some time to put everything together. So as I say, we'll go quickly through sort of the elements of the manuscript. So if you have your abstract, here's a quick rule of 10. So you just want 10 sentences, a lot of information packed into those 10 sentences. What was the aim of your project or purpose or whatever you're reporting on? What were the materials and methods? Just 2 to 3 sentences on that. What were your results? Again, just 2 to 3 sentences. You'll have time through the body of the manuscript to be able to describe it more thoroughly. And then again, another 1 or 2 sentences to discuss, what you feel happened, what difference does it make? What are the takeaway points? Those kind of things. So when you're looking at your introduction, after you've sort of had that abstract sitting on top, it's important to explain to the reader what it is you're looking at. Are you looking at something a problem that you were addressing, or are you looking at a concept, something that you want to explore? So were you addressing a problem with regards to wound management or falls prevention, something like that? Or, were you looking more at the concept of workplace safety, cultural safety, something like that? So think about what it is that you're going to address, and you want to be able to send that to the reader. Why is it important? If you read journals a lot, you'll see it says, what are the key points here? And especially for those of us nowadays who don't have a lot of time to sit down and read the journals, they quite often will give you the cheat sheet right away. What's important? Why is it important? Why should the reader take the time to have a look at the paper that you've written, right? What's the question that you're trying to answer? And another one of my key take homes when I went to university was, one of the profs would say, so what, who cares, right? And it may be very interesting to you, but there's got to be a reason for that. So at the end of the day, the topic that you've chosen or what you're talking about, what does that mean to others? So I discovered something great about this wound care concept, or I discovered a way to prevent falls. So then why is that important? Well, obviously, if we prevent falls, we prevent injury, if we can heal a wound more quickly, then that's beneficial to the patient, whatever that is. So you really need to look at, so what, who cares? Because you want to make sure whatever you're writing about has an impact for other people as well. So again, methods, it's not really rocket science, right? It's, well, what did you do? What was your problem? What did you do to address the problem? I mean, if it wasn't a problem, if you were looking to expand horizons or maybe expand scope of practice or something like that, what did you do and how did you do it? Were there specific tools or assessments or things that you used to address your problem? Who was involved? Was it an implementation of a best practice guidelines? So was there a whole team involved? Or was there a very sub-select group of people that worked on it? So again, letting the reader know, what the problem was and how did you move through it. So as you work through the ideas of the manuscript, it should provide the reader with a very smooth progression, that the steps you took and what you're writing about should make sense to the reader. It's kind of like anything that you do. You want to sort of maybe follow that easily along. It's difficult when you have a choppy kind of back and forth thing, because people will lose track of where they are, and you don't want that. You want them to say, oh, I like this article. Where is it going? Where is it leading me? So when you get to your next section, your results section, obviously you want to let the people know, what did you find out? Did you find out what you wanted to find out? So sometimes we talk about this about, people say, yes, we found out that this particular intervention can reduce falls by 20%. And so that's great, awesome. That's obviously news we want to share with everybody. But sometimes we do something and we don't necessarily get the results that we thought. That, we did this, and based on all the background research that we did and everything else we knew, we thought it would give us this big improvement in, say, falls prevention. But let's say it didn't work out and you didn't quite get what you were looking for. It's still important to share that information, because if you spent 6 months on a very, logical, grounded endeavor to try and decrease falls and then found out it didn't work, maybe sharing that will help somebody else save that 6 months of work, right? Now, people will sometimes say that those kind of articles are more difficult to get published, and that may be, we sort of talk about positive results versus negative results. But I would challenge you and say, I think anything that you do that you can still write up and provide a full story about is important for other people to know. Now, hopefully, when we use best practice guidelines, which are based in science and evidence-based, we won't have that issue. But again, it's still important to know that if you don't necessarily get what you were looking for, it doesn't mean that you can't prepare a manuscript about it. Again, that also comes through to, did you find something unexpected? We were going to do this intervention. We thought this would happen. We had that, but along the other lines, this also happened. So for example, in my PhD research, I looked at people who were living with type 2 diabetes who had to start insulin. We often know that those people are reluctant to start insulin, that they don't want to be on the needle, et cetera, et cetera. So, I found out things that I thought I would find, that they were afraid, that they thought, this is the end of, if I have to go on the needle, then I'm not going to survive for very much longer. But one of the key things that I found out that was quite a surprise was that, and my research was back done in 2012, 13, 14, 15, something like that. So in the 2000s, I still had people who thought that they had to boil their needles to give themselves insulin, right? And the patients, the participants that I looked at were people who had been referred to diabetes education centers in an urban center. So I'm not out in some rural place with people living in tents. So these were urban dwellers living in the city who thought they would have to boil their insulin needles to give themselves insulin. So that was really quite unexpected for me. And it just really emphasized the importance about all the work we still need to do to try and educate people about insulin. So that, again, something that I didn't expect to find, but I thought was a key point that people needed to understand, that diabetes educators needed to know, so that even though we assume in 2012 that people know that we don't have to boil needles, it was an assumption that was wrong. So in the discussion part, again, you pull out your findings or the things that you want to bring to the forefront that you want to let people know about. So you go through that and let them know. You have to be careful. Now, you want to make sure that you present your findings. You want to try and present them in a very unbiased way. I know that we usually, if we're going to do research or we're going to do a quality improvement project, we're always keen about it and we want to say, look, this is great, this is awesome, but you just have to make sure that you be objective about what you found and don't overstate your results. And then again, depending on the journal that you're presenting to or want to get published, you may have a conclusion about that. So especially in nursing, we want to know, what does it add new nursing knowledge? Does it add new knowledge to healthcare? Did you bring up more questions? Did what you fixed or did what you found make you want to look forward and take the next step, right? So important to sort of look at what are the next steps. And then again, thinking about your reader, how can the reader take your experience and apply that to their situation? And are there other ways that it could be applied? Don't forget to thank the people that helped you. RNAO, especially with the best practice guidelines, a super resource for you all across the board. So make sure that you provide acknowledgements of who were there, who helped. Did you have some funding? Were you able to get some funding to help with this? So again, make those acknowledgements. Most organizations, RNAO has a specific citation that you can use if you're, to acknowledge. So again, just all you have to do is contact them and you'll have the citation that you need to use. With regards to references, again, it's extremely important to acknowledge the work of others and make sure that you're not plagiarizing the work that they have done. You'll notice that I've acknowledged on my slides where I've taken some things from. So always very important to acknowledge your sources. Depending on the length of your manuscript or the article that you're writing, there's actually software available that can help you generate your reference lists. Once you put the source that you used into your list, the software will keep it there for you. It will generate the whole reference list. It will help you with your citations as well. So, and it's relatively inexpensive. So I would definitely recommend that if you're planning on doing an article that has a decent amount of references that are required. So again, what makes a good manuscript? You want it to be clear, you want it to be useful, you want to have something there that makes the reader want to read it. As I said before, it's fun to have a curvy road or a curvy hill if you're skiing or something like that. But when you're writing a manuscript, you need it to be clear, you want the message and the flow to follow so that you don't lose your reader, right? And again, if you set it out properly ahead of time and you plan where you want to go, in all likelihood that will make your paper much stronger at the end. So we have another polling question then. I think Andrew's going to help me out with this. So knowing what needs to be in your manuscript, what do you think the challenges might be? So is it choosing the idea? Is it the finding the time to write the manuscript? Is it lack of experience in preparing a manuscript? Or hopefully not, is it all of the above? I know that a lot of people sometimes find the thought of writing a manuscript daunting, but it really doesn't have to be. It's one of those things that if you take a step back and look at the pieces, which is what I've tried to do for you, sort of take each piece out, look at it, just, you can start pulling everything together. And you don't have to do it on your own. You can definitely work with a team. I see about sharing the software references. So yeah, I can put together, again, I won't recommend anyone in particular. There's lots out there. I used a specific one for my master's and my PhD, but I can send that out for people. So we're kind of split a little bit, right? So finding the time, which especially nowadays in the midst of a pandemic is huge. Lack of experience again. And I think if you just have to make that a first attempt, right, to try. And okay, a quarter of you are all of the above. So hopefully by the end of this, maybe we can get the quarter of you being a little bit more open to considering to writing a manuscript. Okay, thank you, Andrea. So we're done there. So as far as resources then, again, I've just listed a few that come to the top of my mind. There may be more, but I say, by virtue of the fact that you're an RNAO champion, RNAO has a huge wealth of resources available to you, whether it's through the best practice guidelines, NQuire for those of you doing BPSO work, all of these kind of things. So I would strongly encourage you to connect with your colleagues at RNAO. They're always there to help. I always find them extremely timely, in response. And I think I mentioned this last week at another conference. There's no stupid questions. And I've asked a few to RNAO, I know for sure. So don't be afraid to ask the questions because they really are supportive and want you to be successful, right? So that's key. So our librarians are masters of library information science folks. Boy, are they know what they're doing. So if you aren't sure about where the literature is with regards to whatever you're looking at, connecting with a librarian, they can do amazing lit searches for you depending on where you work. Some organizations have librarians that work for them. Otherwise, if you're a smaller organization, you might have to go through one of a university, et cetera. And a lot of the colleges and universities are connected now, right? There are joint programs, collaborative programs. So don't be afraid to try and connect with somebody through that. Advanced practice nurses, one of our roles as an advanced practice nurse is to try and help mentor people with regards to advanced practice, with regards to leadership and publishing, et cetera. So, if you have an advanced practice nurse in your organization, don't be afraid to tap them on the shoulder and just say, hey, is there a chance you could give me a hand? And, they're not going to write it for you, but I'm sure most APNs would be happy to try and provide some guidance. And as I said before, university and college programs as well. So people, these are people who are used to literature, who are used to lit reviews, article searching, those kind of things. So I would, definitely tap on their shoulder first and see if they can give you a hand. And as I say, this isn't really rocket science. So when you're choosing the journal that you want to send your article to, and really that's one of the first things that you need to look at before you write your article. So we went through what's in the manuscript, what are the elements of the manuscript. So you've got that piece of it. However, it's very important that once you start writing or before you start writing, you choose a journal that you want to apply to, because each journal will have its own recommendations for the pieces, the elements that they want in the manuscript. So they might want something specific that I haven't mentioned. And they'll have a style that they would like written in. So there's APA, there's other element ways to be writing it. So when you have your idea, you should have a feel for which journals you think might want to publish that. So, and then go to that journal's website and start looking. I've got a few clips on the slides here that will help you perhaps choose a journal. And if you're not sure where to send it to or what journal might be interested in, then again, talk to your colleagues at RNAO. They will help you. With regards to RNAO, typically the preference is a peer-reviewed journal, meaning it's where they it's reviewed by peers before it's accepted. But again, I think at the end of the day, the important thing is that you want to get your information out there. So if there is a journal that's not necessarily peer reviewed, but it will be able to take your article or take your paper and publish it, I think that's still worthwhile looking at. Obviously nursing journals are important, but again, and I work in a particularly interprofessional situation where in a small hospital, we all work together. So occupational therapists, physiotherapists, pharmacy, all of the disciplines work very well together. So even though I'm a nurse, I'm often looking at the other allied health journals to see if there's a focus that we could present there as well. It's important to only submit to one journal at a time. It's not cool to just send it out to 5 different people and then wait to see who might take it. It sounds like that'd be a good time saver, but that's not cool. So once you submit to one journal, you do need to wait for them to get back to you to let you know if you've been accepted or not. And again, as I say, once you've chosen your journal, go on there and see the guidelines, because they will have guidelines for authors right on their website and let you know what you need to do. And again, I don't endorse anyone over another. If you just look, these are sort of some of the main players, but there's lots of different publishers. So just have a look and see. If you do any reading of literature, look at the articles that you like to read. What journals are they in, right? Is that a journal that you would be able to send your article to? So this is an example, right? So if you go onto the Elsevier website, it has a whole algorithm that'll take you through. So what is it that you're wanting to, what's your idea? What would you like? You pop it into here. It will find a possible journal for you to present to or submit to, right? So again, lots of tools available, just you have to know where to find them and look. And if you're not familiar, again, I would definitely direct you to the librarians. They're very familiar with these things, and they keep very current, right? Because that's what they do. That's their role, is to be able to stay on top of all this electronic searching, et cetera. Because the days of walking in, so this now I'm going to show my age. The days of walking in the stacks and finding articles are long gone. Thank goodness we have lots of different ways to acknowledge it. Okay. Just looking at the time here, so I want to make sure that I leave time for questions. So when you're ready to publish, depends on how long it takes you to get there, but when you're ready to publish, at some point you're just going to have to push that button and send it on its way. Okay, so until you send it in and start getting feedback, you won't know where you are. So don't be afraid. Once you've got your article together, I would suggest that you have whoever writes the articles and have other people read it. So people who are outside your circle, someone who's not familiar with the work that you've done, have them have a read, and does it make sense to them? Do they understand? Because sometimes for the forest through the trees, right? When you've been living it, it makes sense to you, but you've got to give it off to somebody who hasn't been in the forest with you to make sure that they understand it as well. Again, the publishers and all have it's all identified very clearly what they want to see in the article. So make sure, or your manuscript, so make sure you follow the guidelines, because if you haven't, they'll let you know. Try and find a title that reflects the information in there. Make it short, don't have it too long. Something interesting. Again, whenever I think about writing something or doing a presentation, I often go back to, well, what do I like? What would I like to see? What article title would tweak me to read it versus something that I would just say, maybe I don't have time for that, right? Because time is so precious to all of us. So you want to make sure that the title is something that someone says, okay, yep, that's worth me reading, okay? And then there's a cover letter that goes with it, just like when you're applying for a job. So make sure that your cover letter, relays to the publisher or the editors what it is why it's important for them to publish your work. And again, the publication process is a little bit, it's not just pop it in and off it goes. There's several things that have to be done. It goes into the editors look at it, they may send it back right away, because maybe even though the work that you've done is good, it doesn't really meet the theme of the article or of the paper itself, or it doesn't fit well with the content of that particular journal. So again, you're trying to pick the right journal is good, but if you don't give up, then maybe there's another place that you should be looking. I've circled the revision, resubmission, review in red, because almost always this happens. It's in practically, if you submit a paper and it's accepted without any revisions, then you better go buy a lottery ticket, because that's the same amount of luck that you've had, okay? Expect your paper to be rejected and some revisions required. That really is just normal process with regards to papers, okay? So do not get disheartened, do not get disgruntled if they don't like your paper. It's very common, and it almost always has to be redone. And as I say, this is a very wordy slide, but basically it says there's lots of outcomes. Almost always it is going to need some type of revision, major revision, minor revision, whatever it is. The editors will also give you very clear feedback about what they would like to see in order for your manuscript to be published in their journal. Sorry, I was just saying one of the questions there about opinion pieces. And just so the question says, any suggestions on opinion pieces, approaches to embedding evidence and work that is not academic? Yeah. So again, it really will depend on where you're trying to send that to. So opinion pieces, most journals will have op-eds, right? So they'll have opinion pieces, and I think it's always worth attempting those. If you feel that you've got enough evidence that you can embed in that, I think it's always worth a try. Again, you won't know unless you try, right? So I definitely think, go for it. The worst they can do is say no, right? Oh, slide stuck. Oh, sorry, slides were stuck. There we go. So again, my attempt at humor here, they've got baseball bats and lots of sharp-looking implements. So your paper is highly unlikely to be accepted initially. Just expect that it's going to come back to you, and know that with revisions in all likelihood, you will be able to get it published. just some ideas. We're at 2:34, so just quickly, and then I'm going to turn it back to Grace and Andrea if they want to monitor the questions. You know, if you're working with a BPSO or you have NQuera data, you know, what does your data show? Is there something interesting that you could share with others? Evidence boosters, those kind of things. Those are great things to try and write up and publish. You know, what was your implementation experience like if you implemented a new BPG, or did you have an existing practice that you enhanced with the BPG? People like to hear about that. So coming from a small organization, you know, I often think that the things that we do here, other smaller organizations might want to hear about, right? You know, who else would be interested in your work? These are the things that, again, it's just a matter of sitting down, taking the time to think about what is it that we want to share with people, what's important to get out there. And just because, you know, you think, well, nobody really cares about that, you'd be surprised, right? I think if you don't take the time, if you don't, you know, just step back and think, okay, I want to share this, how will I do it? You'll never know if you don't try, right? I'm just going to show this quickly. Again, you're going to get access to the slides. So this is a nice visual. Now the ACL is the American Chemistry Society. So just as I say, I really like this because it's good visual. So it takes you through the steps in a very quick pictorial way. So know that not only nursing, but even the chemists need the guidelines to be able to get their manuscripts written. And so I think the last slide for me is, as I said before, read papers, the papers that you like and what you see, then, you know, focus on that, right? And if you see something and you're like, oh, I hate it when they do this, well, then don't put that in your paper, right? Start early, write often, and practice make perfect, and maybe write one of those opinion pieces, something like that, just to get your feet wet and make yourself comfortable. As I said, I don't know if I probably feel like I'm overemphasizing it, but you can't overemphasize it enough. It's going to take multiple drafts to get your paper done. And then even after you have slaved and put your blood, sweat, and tears into that paper and you send it off, it's going to come back needing revisions, okay? So that's just the reality of manuscript preparation. Like I said, make sure people outside your team read it and see if they like it. You know, be objective and don't take it personally when it comes back and it's not been accepted. It just means it doesn't have the right fit for that particular journal. You know, is there a different journal that you could look at or a different way to publish it? Okay. So again, I don't know, I gave this, I credited this source for this, but in all honesty, like there's no way to get experience except through experience, right? We've all learned that through life. Unfortunately, the novice to expert continuum is exactly that. It's a continuum. So you start at novice, you're going to start out, your first paper is going to be kind of rough. And then you get better. I know that my presentations and my posters when I first started, I look at them now and I kind of cringe, but you have to start somewhere, right? If you don't start somewhere, you won't be able to build upon it. And you know, practice makes perfect. So here's my contact information. Happy for everybody to connect with me if you have any questions or feedback. Just wait, if it's at all possible, could you wait till after March the 8th? Because I do have a big RNAO BPSO report I have to get in by then. But after that, I'm all yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Maureen, for making publishing accessible to all of us and reinforcing the fact that individuals, groups beyond academia can definitely publish. So thank you very much for that presentation. We do have some comments as well as a question from the audience, so I'm going to go through them now. There is a comment from Steve who says, I want to encourage the importance of Indigenous nurses contributing to the growing body of Indigenous-led research in bioethics. So
absolutely. I had an email come across my computer yesterday where there's looks like it's a young RPN who's transitioning to RN who wants to start an RNAO interest group for Indigenous nurses and allies. And I wholeheartely supported that endeavor because I think it's very, very important. And definitely, you know, there's so much work that needs to be done with the Indigenous healthcare. So yeah, I totally agree.
no, yeah, that's amazing. It just helps to, as us as allies, to continue to develop on our cultural sensitivity, cultural awareness, cultural competency. So thank you. Terry, she is asking, we've been working diligently on our manuscript, but we are newbies. Wondering about the balance of the different sections in the article. We have an introduction, discussion, and conclusion. Our intro is about the same length as the discussion. Is that okay?
Well, it's okay if it reads well, right? So I don't think you have to. I don't think you have to limit yourself. I think as long as you aren't repeating yourself. So if the information in your intro makes sense and there's not a lot of repetition, and if you're in your discussion, it makes sense, it flows well, and there's not a lot of repetition, nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, that's appropriate. I wouldn't expect you don't want to have like a huge introduction. So again, I think if it reads well, because it depends on your problem, right? So whatever you're outlining. So I don't think there's any hard and fast rules about that. At the end of the day, as long as it reads well and you don't have a bunch of repetition, then I would just leave it. And again, once you send it in, if the editor doesn't like it, they'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. There's also another comment saying, thanks for the boost of confidence regarding being ready for rejection. The first one can be really discouraging, but the constructive criticisms help to make revising the manuscript easier.
Yeah, and it's absolutely true. I mean, I was doing my master's, I would put papers in. I was old enough, I was long enough ago when I was doing my master's, it was still paper stuff. So, it would come back and be read everywhere. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I spent hours writing this and, and I know about evidence and that kind of stuff. But again, I realize that I'm getting feedback from somebody who's been writing in academia for a long time. So, you just take a big breath, you swallow, you look at it and say, okay, well, these changes make sense to me, so I'll go ahead and make them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I guess maybe from your perspective and your experience, Maureen, with working at RNAO, where at RNAO did you get support if you needed it?
So, God, well, I'm all over. As a BPSO, Susan McNeil's been a great mentor for us, a great coach. So, if I access Susan, then she would send it. So obviously, even if you just access somebody at RNAO, they will send it to the right person, right? Mm-hmm. So, so I had the advantage of having a coach there. When I was doing my master's work, because I also did my master's work with the RNAO best practice guidelines. So I just accessed the best practice guideline team, right? And so, get your foot into whichever team, if you're using a VPG, find out who's monitoring that, and then just work through, as I say, the folks at RNAO will direct your question wherever it needs to go. So worst case scenario, just call RNAO and then go from there.
Okay. Sounds good. And then there's a few other comments again, appreciating the realistic expectations about having to write multiple drafts. And there was a suggestion here from Lee Mantini. If you read articles already published in the journal you are targeting, you will see how each article is presented and will be able to figure out if your intro is too long, too short, or just right.
Yeah, it really does go back to which journal that you're applying to, right? Mm-hmm. They will all have specifications about what they want. For example, the manuscript that we're about to submit for our BPSO is going to the GAPNA, Gerontologic Advanced Practice Nurses in the States. And so they have a very specific subsection. So it's just it's like a 5-page paper that has very specific guidelines about we are only allowed to have 10 references. We're only allowed to have 2 diagrams. So, we chose that specifically because we wanted to make sure that it was reachable, that we could get the article done in time to be able to be submitted. So it's very specific of, well, what needs to be done. It's not a 15-page article. It's a 5-pager, this many references, this many figures or charts.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And just as an aside, in terms of additional support at RNAO, Lee, who is a long-term care best practice coordinator with RNAO, there are 14 of them across Ontario, and they are also there to support you. And Melanie is asking, I am planning to write a manuscript because I feel that the work we do is too important to stay silent. So thanks for the encouragement. I'm wondering what is the difference between an opinion piece and a QI article? We have some data, but not with the academic rigor we need to write research.
So, if the information that you have, if it wasn't done as a research project, right? So if you didn't get ethics and you didn't go through formal, so then it's more of a quality improvement thing, which again doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile writing. And I again wholeheartedly agree that get your information out there. So it just goes as a quality improvement. So you can, you don't, so when you're submitting it, you don't submit it as a research project, right? This is a quality improvement initiative that was undertaken. Doesn't mean that quality improvement isn't done with rigor, right? Where you're still using evidence, the BPGs are evidence-based guidelines. So again, it doesn't have the same caliber as a research journal is going to want, so that it's not, so don't send it there, right? Send it to someplace that is publishing quality improvement pieces.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So it looks like that we are just about out of time, but Maureen, there are kudos in the chat box saying thank you very much for your presentation, and that your presentation was very useful, and it looks like people are in different stages of preparing their research proposal or a manuscript, so thank you very much. If you have any other questions for Maureen, please feel free to email her at any time. And you can also reach RNAO and myself or Andrea in regard to any supports. And we can, as Maureen had said, connect you to additional supports that are available at RNAO. And so what you're going to do is that you're going to have a copy of today's presentation, and it's also going to be recorded. So it's going to be posted on the RNAO website for you to be able to share with others or to re-review again. And please fill out the evaluation survey. We always want to know what other topics you'd like to be able to learn more about. Again, this is a champions network for other champions, and so we want it to be relevant for you. If you have any questions, please contact Andrea Stubbs, the project lead of this champions program, at astubbs@rnao.ca. Thank you again, Maureen, for your excellent presentation and for sharing your expertise and advice with us. We really appreciate it. And to everyone, thank you so much for attending, and have a great day.
Thank you.